Thursday the 31st of December. Coming up, tight security across Europe on the eve of a new year.
The city on edge since deadly terror attacks last month.
Authorities are scaling down celebrations.
Three-month state of emergency decreed.
Considering the year it had, Paris could have just canceled. Other nervous European capitals declared there'd be no New Year's Eve celebrations. Crowds too risky with the threats so high. But French resolve was greater than its fear. The state of emergency still in full twitchy force, acting at the slightest hint of trouble, clearing the way because Parisians needed to come together. As one, they needed to bid adieu to the hateful 2015. A party as prescriptive as medicine to blow off steam. 2015 started so savagely. The murder of 4 at a kosher grocery store, the gunning down of police, and of course, the execution of writers and cartoonists in this famed city of arts and letters. 11 slaughtered in the editorial meeting at the satirical weekly Charlie Hebdo, and then 11 wounded. Supposed revenge for the paper's predictably provocative cartoons of the Prophet Muhammad.
I have a lot of pain, you know.
Daniel Leconte was a real friend to Charlie Hebdo. Had made a film nearly a decade ago about the tiny marginal paper when it was first taken to court for running the Mohammed cartoons. He always sensed the irreverent weekly symbolism was swelling.
But Charlie is laughing, you know, but not laughing for laughing. Laughing just to help you to think. That's Charlie.
And that's France.
And that's France, in a way. This tiny newspaper, as you say, you know, is the first line on the battlefront of France. And that's why they were attacking it.
And on that January day, the gunmen were heard running from the offices shouting, "We killed Charlie Hebdo." Did you think they really had killed Charlie Hebdo?
At this precise moment, you know, I was very pessimistic.
But Charlie Hebdo carried on, and this the commemorative edition. A bloodied Kalashnikov-toting god of all. 1 year on, it reads, "The assassin is still on the run." Why not draw the Prophet Muhammad again, sniffed some. How dare they condemn religion, period, sneered others. Charlie is still Charlie, poking sticks at the sacred. Again, resolve apparently trumps fear, and to hell with those who don't like it. At least that's the way it's all supposed to feel now. France is so stubborn about its defiance, about showing this public face of being okay. And in a way, it is coping well. It's also just surely transformed. The Charlie Hebdo staff, for example, who just carry on, they now work in a new office that is hermetically sealed, heavily guarded, complete with panic room. Its location is a secret in France. They may be getting used to it, but that isn't really about being okay. And Zineb El-Razoui's existence is hardly a normal one.
They say that I am the most protected woman in France.
She's a writer with Charlie Hebdo, happened to be out of the country the day of the attacks.
And after that, I spent the whole day trying to know who was killed and who was still alive. But I only had 4, 5, 6, then 7 names. And I was watching the television and I was just crying. You know, that was so shocking. I thought I will never find the courage to leave that sofa.
But she did. Went right to work on what's become known as the survivors issue. That got the attention of ISIS and threats came flooding in.
It was a letter identified as a letter from the Islamic State. In a very classical well-written Arabic, saying that they will not close their eyes before they separate my head from my body.
ISIS told people to hunt her in Paris, still does. And so, just out of camera range are armed police officers, a 24/7 security detail so intense it can't be shown and could be with her for years. The Lecontes, the father, Daniel, and son, Emmanuel, knew, like all of France, that the assassinations at Charlie Hebdo marked a historic moment. So they went back to their friends at the paper for a new documentary that's in theaters now. A minute-by-minute reconstruction of the attack. Coco, the cartoonist forced by the gunman to unlock the door so they could kill her colleagues.
Quand je fais le code, j'ai la Kalachnikov que je sens un moment dans mon dos. Je pense à ma fille, tout se bouscule. Je suis complètement déchirée en fait. Je suis déchirée.
They were telling us, okay, yes, we went through hell, and we're going to tell you about it, and it's horrible, and in a sense, yes, our lives are shattered, but we'll never stop.
The Lecontes saw that January 11th march last year when millions took to the streets as France showing the world its strong, defiant heart. They opened their documentary with it, the modern French resistance. I mean, you said it's not a war, but it is a war in a way. Is that how you win the war?
We're in a country that says, okay, you guys are attacking us. We're gonna stand tall. We're gonna be strong in the streets and show our support to the people who are gone and carry their memory forever.
And that's how you defeat it?
I think that yes.
Paris still loves a parade. 2016 dawned with yet another one full of gleeful national pride.
That's the Place de la Concorde, full of imperial confidence. And not a traditional place for protest marches, more for aren't we fabulous marches.
Right. Yeah. Is that a little bit of what this is, an Aren't We Fabulous?
Yeah, this is an Aren't We Fabulous march. And they're thrilling. I love those marches.
What do you make of this turnout?
It's actually incredibly thin compared with these kinds of things normally. Pardon. Excusez-moi. And quite a lot of foreigners.
Cutting through appearances is the trade of lyrical cynic Robert McLean Wilson, an Irish novelist hired by Charlie Hebdo after the attacks, brought in to help cope with the unfillable void. He doesn't buy the argument that shows of solidarity or defiance in the face of terror can help a nation defeat it. But does it feel good a little bit to see a little bit of relaxing?
I'd love to go with your narrative, but I come from Belfast, and none of this bullshit works. Political violence means that the tiny minority dominates everything. And you don't get a say in any of it, and you particularly do not decide when it stops. So this is lovely, and it makes no difference at all, I'm sorry.
He comes by that blunt talk honestly. He endured 30 years of Belfast bloodshed, was barely old enough to remember the first time he heard explosions and gunfire. Coming to France was surely an escape from that, or at least it used to be. Last January's march, that parade of power, felt also frustratingly familiar to Wilson.
I grew up listening to politicians making statements of condemnation. I grew up listening to people saying this has to stop, this violence is disgraceful. So I grew up realizing how pointless and futile those gestures are.
None of it sat right with him. The supposed show of solidarity, he thought, ended up saying a lot more about France's divisions.
It was super white, that Je suis Charlie. My God, it was white. Now I'm Irish, I'm the whitest guy in history, and even I thought it was incredibly white.
And you take what from that?
Well, France has a lot of problems. Every country is racist in its own way. In France, like an Arab guy can talk about le français, can talk about, you know, the French guy. Like, I'm waiting for the le français. Whereas in America, which has a, you know, that history of slavery. You can't imagine a black guy saying, yeah, we're waiting for the American. The question of nationality is the absolute first principle of people of different backgrounds living together, and it hasn't been sorted out here.
Among the still stunned in that march, Zineb El-Razoui, standing with her Charlie Hebdo friends. In those moments, beyond the loss, something else nagged at her.
All those chief of states, you know, who came to express their solidarity to France, and actually most of them were dictators or representing dictatorships. And most of those countries don't respect freedom of speech, don't respect freedom of belief. So they were walking this 11th of January for other reasons.
The appearance of all that support came with a surge of readers and a huge influx of money for the formerly almost bankrupt paper. In the months that followed, as Charlie Hebdo sort of fell out of the public eye in France and Paris tried to move on, readership waned, but the new money remained. And life at Charlie Hebdo got complicated. Some staff started backing away, a few quit, and they argued about ownership, editorial, wages.
The health of Charlie Hebdo have never been as bad as now. So we are now in a situation in Charlie Hebdo which is similar to what happens every time you have a big concentration of money and of power in a very few hands.
Robert Wilson suggests the infighting might have another explanation. He calls it the 6-month mark.
Where if you suffer egregious violence, often the worst effects of that happen 6 months later. You've functioned well, you've gone back to work, you've looked after your family, you've done what you need to do, and then you become a wreck. And, you know, it kind of started happening at Charlie.
And in the middle of that struggle, those monsters came back to Paris. Between the immediate cries and the cops, the muscle memory of what terrorism does to a place again kicked in for Wilson in ways that surprised even him.
There were a lot of helicopters, and that night I slept like a baby because that stuff had helped me sleep when I was a kid. And it was a reminder of how, if this kind of stuff goes on, it really, really changes your DNA. It changes who you are. Terrorism or political violence is not about the victim. It's about the rest of us. It's about changing the way a city or a country operates, and it's about making people scared.
The changes are tangible. The state of emergency that goes on, protection at churches and especially synagogues, and subtle shifts in the day-to-day. See that security guard? Not long ago, he would have been posted at the store's exit checking for thieves. Now he's at the entrance, more worried about what people are bringing in.
If you are in a situation of war, of course, you have to change a little bit your way of life.
True, but every place responds with its own attitude. Those November attacks were a direct hit on a way of life many in France hold dear. It was again Charlie Hebdo that had the quick comeback, publishing what was called a giant middle finger to terrorism. They've got the weapons, screw them, we've got the champagne. The cartoon was drawn by Coco, the woman who'd been forced to open the door for the gunman at the Hebdo offices.
And now the question is not Charlie. The question is France. Because France is the target. Everybody has understood because of Charlie and because of the slaughter, the first slaughter. Everybody in France knows that they are the target. Not only Charlie, but they are the target. And they started to understand, you know, why they are the target.
Hard to turn back from thinking like that. This is a nation now forced to make all sorts of new calculations about its safety and identity. And for all those commemorations and parades and earnest candles, collectively trying to insist it will be okay, you can't deny something here has been lost. Adrienne Arsenault, CBC News, Paris.